Johnny Carson, the undisputed king of late-night television, was beloved by millions for his charm, quick wit, and ease with guests. For 30 years, he ruled the airwaves as the host of The Tonight Show, delivering laughter, spontaneity, and unforgettable moments. While Carson was typically the master of smooth banter, he also had a sharp edge that sometimes caught his guests off guard. From subtle jabs to outright roasting, Carson had moments where his humor could cross the line into uncomfortable territory. Some guests laughed it off, but others weren't so lucky, finding themselves the target of Johnny's biting wit. Today, we'll explore those memorable moments when Johnny Carson humiliated his guests on live TV, either by accident or sometimes with clear intent. Before diving into these infamous moments, it's worth examining what made Carson such a formidable force in television. His mastery of comedic timing, improvisation, and charm was unparalleled, but it was also his ability to read a room, and sometimes go too far, that left an indelible mark on late-night history. The dual nature of Johnny Carson. Warm host, cutting humor. Johnny Carson's rise to stardom began in the Midwest, far from the spotlight of Hollywood. Born in 1925 in Corning, Iowa, Carson was naturally introverted and shy. He found his outlet in magic and performance, gaining confidence through the applause and admiration of those watching him perform. This passion for magic led him to explore comedy and eventually the world of television. In 1962, when Carson took over as the host of The Tonight Show from Jack Paar, he brought a breath of fresh air to late-night TV. His monologues were sharp, his interviews engaging, and his quick-witted responses became a trademark. He had a gift for making guests, whether celebrities or regular folks, feel at ease. Yet beneath that relaxed demeanor was a man who didn't always hold back when someone rubbed him the wrong way. While most interviews ended with laughter and smiles, there were moments when Carson's sharp tongue got the better of him. Guests were left flustered, speechless, or visibly uncomfortable after Carson delivered a punchline that hit a little too hard. These moments weren't always planned, but they became iconic for showing a different side of the late-night legend, a side that could be biting, even brutal, if you were caught off guard. So let's jump into the times when Carson's humor went a little too far, leaving his guests red-faced in front of millions of viewers. 1. Bob Hope, a comedy legend, becomes the target. Bob Hope was one of Johnny Carson's most frequent guests, appearing on The Tonight Show regularly to promote his latest projects. On the surface, the two seemed to get along fine, two comedy legends sharing the stage. But behind the scenes, things were different. Carson reportedly had little patience for Hope's reliance on pre-written material. Hope, known for his polished delivery and old-school comedy style, stuck to scripted jokes during his appearances. This irritated Carson, who thrived on spontaneity and improvisation. In one particularly awkward interview in the early 1980s, Carson's frustration with Hope's predictability boiled over. Hope began plugging his latest television special, going through a list of one-liners that felt rehearsed and disconnected from the conversation. Carson's responses grew increasingly curt, and it was clear to the audience that he was barely tolerating the exchange. His body language said it all. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and forced a tight-lipped smile. The discomfort was palpable, and while Hope seemed oblivious to it, Carson's subtle jabs throughout the interview let the audience in on his annoyance. Hope may not have realized it at the time, but Carson's cold reception and clipped responses effectively undermined the veteran comedian's performance. It was a case of passive humiliation. Carson didn't need to say much, but his demeanor spoke volumes. 2. The Zaza Gabor cat incident. Did it really happen? Few late-night legends are as enduring as the supposed exchange between Johnny Carson and Zaza Gabor. As the story goes, during a 1969 appearance, Gabor brought her cat on stage and, in her flirtatious style, asked Carson, "Would you like to pet my pussy?" Carson, without missing a beat, allegedly replied, Sure, if you move that damn cat out of the way. The quip, if it happened, would have been a perfect example of Carson's ability to push boundaries while maintaining his composure. The audience would have erupted in laughter, and Gabor, glamorous, poised, and famously dramatic, would have been left stunned by the audacity of the joke. However, there's no video footage to confirm whether this incident actually occurred. Both Carson and Gabor denied it in later interviews, and some believe the story is apocryphal. Yet, it remains one of the most famous anecdotes associated with Carson's career. Whether it's true or not, it speaks to the type of quick, razor-sharp humor that Carson was known for. Humor that could leave guests feeling flustered or humiliated in the blink of an eye. 3. Ed Ames and the Tomahawk Throw, from humiliation to iconic comedy. Not all of Johnny Carson's on-air humiliations were intentional. Sometimes they were the result of hilarious accidents, as was the case during Ed Ames's now legendary Tomahawk demonstration. Ames, an actor known for his role in Daniel Boone, appeared on The Tonight Show in 1965 to demonstrate his tomahawk throwing skills. Carson set up a wooden outline of a man as the target, and Ames prepared to show off his technique. What happened next became one of the most unforgettable moments in late-night history. Ames threw the tomahawk, and instead of hitting the chest or head, it landed squarely in the groin of the wooden figure. The audience burst into laughter, but it was Carson's quick-witted response that turned the moment into television gold. Without hesitation, Carson quipped, "I didn't even know you were Jewish." Ames, visibly embarrassed but laughing, tried to play along as the crowd roared. Carson, however, milked the moment for all it was worth, making several more jokes and drawing out the laughter. Ames may have been the one who made the blunder, but Carson turned it into a full-blown comedic moment, leaving Ames red-faced as the butt of the joke. It was a prime example of Carson's ability to turn an awkward situation into a laughing riot, though at the expense of his guests' pride. 4. Don Rickles, the prankster, gets pranked. Few could go toe-to-toe with Johnny Carson like Don Rickles. Known as the Merchant of Venom, Rickles was famous for his insult comedy, and his appearances on The Tonight Show were always filled with sharp jabs and laughter. But even Rickles wasn't immune to Carson's brand of humor. During one of Rickles' guest hosting stints, he accidentally broke Carson's beloved cigarette box. When Carson returned to the show and discovered the damage, he didn't let it slide. In a rare unscripted moment, Carson grabbed a camera crew and marched across the NBC studio lot to where Rickles was filming CPO Sharky. Carson barged onto the set, interrupting the production, and confronted Rickles on live television. Rickles, known for his quick comebacks, was momentarily at a loss for words as Carson berated him in front of the cast and crew. The audience at home loved it, and Carson's impromptu prank became a classic moment in television history. It was one of the few times Rickles found himself on the receiving end of the joke, and Carson reveled in the reversal of roles. While the moment was all in good fun, it was clear that Carson had no problem embarrassing even his closest friends when the opportunity arose. Rickles, for once, had to take the jokes instead of dishing them out. 5. Shelly Winters, when things got wet. One of the more heated moments on The Tonight Show came during an interview with actress Shelly Winters. Known for her fiery personality and bold opinions, Winters wasn't one to back down from a confrontation. So when Carson made a dismissive comment during their interview, Winters didn't hesitate to retaliate. In a moment of frustration, Winters picked up her glass of water and threw it at Carson, drenching him in front of a stunned audience. Carson, ever the professional, wiped himself off and continued with the interview as if nothing had happened. But the tension was palpable, and Winters was visibly upset for the rest of the segment. The water-throwing incident became one of the most infamous moments in Tonight Show history, showcasing just how far things could escalate when Carson's humor crossed the line. Winters may have been humiliated, but she wasn't afraid to fight back, turning the tables on Carson in one of the most shocking moments of his career. 6. Raymond Burr, the king of cool stumbles. Raymond Burr, best known for his role as Perry Mason, was another guest who felt the sting of Johnny Carson's sharp tongue. Burr, a seasoned actor with a cool and composed demeanor, wasn't used to being the target of jokes. But during one appearance on The Tonight Show, Carson's teasing got the better of him. Burr had recently gained weight, and Carson, always quick to notice a potential punchline, made a few offhand remarks about his size. At first, Burr tried to laugh it off, but Carson didn't let up. The teasing continued, and Burr, visibly uncomfortable, attempted to steer the conversation in a different direction. But Carson's relentless humor kept bringing it back to Burr's weight, leaving the usually composed actor in an awkward position. The audience laughed, but Burr wasn't amused. His responses became shorter, and his laughter more forced as Carson's jabs landed with increasing precision. By the end of the segment, Burr's discomfort was evident, and while Carson had kept the audience entertained, he had clearly gone too far with a guest who was known for his stoicism and professionalism. Burr may not have been humiliated in the traditional sense, but the experience showed that even the coolest of guests could find themselves squirming under the pressure of Carson's humor. 7. Mel Brooks, the too much fun moment. Mel Brooks, the legendary filmmaker and comedian, was known for his fast-paced humor and improvisational skills, qualities that should have made him a perfect match for Carson. However, during one memorable appearance on The Tonight Show, things didn't go quite as planned. Brooks came on the show in his usual high-energy fashion, riffing with Carson about his latest projects and launching into his signature manic style of comedy. At first, Carson was all smiles, but as the interview wore on, it became clear that Brooks's non-stop humor was becoming overwhelming, even for Carson. Brooks' relentless pace and over-the-top antics left little room for Carson's signature dry wit, and as the interview went on, Carson's frustration grew more apparent. At one point, Brooks made a particularly loud joke, and Carson, unable to hold back any longer, leaned into the camera and said, "Somebody's having too much fun." The audience laughed, but the tension between Carson and Brooks was palpable. Brooks, ever the showman, tried to play along, but the dynamic had shifted. Carson, the master of control, was no longer driving the conversation, and it was clear he wasn't happy about it. While Brooks was never the type to be truly humiliated, this moment showed that even a guest as skilled as he was could test Carson's patience, leading to a rare moment where the host seemed to lose his cool. 8. Truman Capote, the intellectual showdown. Truman Capote, the acclaimed author of In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's, was a frequent guest on The Tonight Show. His appearances were often lively, with his eccentric personality and sharp intellect making him a unique figure on late-night television. But in one appearance, things took a more awkward turn. Capote, known for his sometimes flamboyant behavior and biting wit, engaged in a verbal sparring match with Carson. At first, the exchange seemed playful, with Capote tossing out clever remarks and Carson countering with his own quips. But as the conversation continued, Capote's comments became more personal, and Carson, usually the one to poke fun at his guests, found himself on the receiving end. Rather than back down, Carson fought fire with fire, launching into a series of jabs that clearly caught Capote off guard. The back and forth grew increasingly tense, and while the audience enjoyed the banter, it was clear that the exchange had turned from playful to uncomfortable. Capote, not one to shy away from conflict, tried to hold his own, but Carson's relentless wit left him flustered. By the end of the interview, both men were visibly irritated, and what had started as a lively conversation had turned into a showdown of egos. Capote, for all his brilliance, found himself outmatched by Carson's ability to turn a conversation into a comedic takedown, leaving him embarrassed in front of a live audience. The line between humor and humiliation. These moments from The Tonight Show highlight the fine line between humor and humiliation. While Carson was known for his sharp wit and ability to make even the most serious guests laugh, He also had a knack for pushing things too far. His guests were often caught off guard by his jokes, unsure of how to respond or defend themselves against his quick comebacks. In some cases, this led to uncomfortable exchanges that left both Carson and his guests feeling less than amused. But despite these moments of tension and discomfort, it's clear that Carson's humor was ultimately meant to entertain rather than humiliate. He may have crossed the line at times, but it was all in the name of making people laugh. And for every uncomfortable moment, there were countless more where Carson's guests left The Tonight Show with a smile on their face, grateful for the chance to share the stage with the king of late night. So, what do you think about these moments, guys? Do you think Carson crossed the line with his humor, or was it all just part of the show? Well, let us know in the comments below. And also, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content on your favorite late night hosts.